Welcome to Create Momentum for Positive Mindset. Today, my guest is Jason Phillip. Welcome, Jason. How are you and how are you doing this weekend?
I'm very good, Shazad. So really looking forward to being here and speaking with you today. I know we've been planning this a little bit,
Yeah,
but yeah, this weekend's been good. It's pretty stormy weather in London, but nothing out of the ordinary, shall we say?
yeah. As London weather, I mean, what you can expect in December, from December, the cold weather start and raining and snow. That's how it
Yeah,
is. So
yep,
today we're
yep,
gonna
yep.
talk. Today we're gonna talk about leadership. So, Jason, please tell me,
Mm.
it's a good subject, and a lot of people are managers, not leaders. So I'm going to start this way. How do you define effective leadership and why it is important in a team or organization?
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting question, and like you say, Shazad, it's a massive subject that you could cover amongst many different parts of life. But we're predominantly looking at inside a business management sort of today. And I am starting my own journey in leadership in various manager roles throughout my career, and again with a new role recently. Yeah, I guess leadership really is firstly defined, should I say, by the key point, the leader. In order to, be effective in leadership, you need to be someone that is prepared to lead from the front, come up with new ideas, motivate a team to move forward. You can't really be someone that people are willing to follow. You can't really, you have to set an example. And I think leadership is important in a business structure because you know, a business needs hierarchy in order for it to function. You need like the head of the CEOs, and they're obviously really important because they're the big decision makers. But then you have the subsections of leadership, your aerial managers, your site managers, your team leaders. And these are really important as well, right? Because these are the people that are going to help cooperate and work alongside your general workforce, the everyday people that come to work and try to facilitate your business. Um, yeah, it's really important. Structure is important. It's also good for people to know where they are and where they sit within the business because it's all good being at the top and looking down, but also as someone working at a foundation, you want to be able to look up and aspire towards that sort of progression. I would say the key thing for leadership is to be someone that is willing to lead from the front, to do the job themselves, and then teach others and lead, instruct others on how to do it. Uh, and also really having that ability to listen and change to the team because effective leadership is not essentially just telling people what you want to do. It's allowing people to have the space to participate in the thought process that goes behind the decisions that managers say. Um, there's actually a quote from Charles Darwin that I quite like, where he said it's not the strongest of the species that survive, but the most intelligent, and the one that's most responsive to change. So leaders have to adapt, they have to be prepared to change, and they have to be prepared to listen to other people to help incorporate that change. So, yeah, I mean, we've covered a lot of stuff just in that one question, but yeah, I would say the main key point of that is that leadership is required to lead from the front and set example.
Okay, that is a good way to define it. I want to ask you, how did you get to the read a leadership role? Is it that something you've been looking for a long time, or is it from when you started your career, it was in your mind that you're going to be a leader and lead the team one day?
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. I think it's really important if you're going to have like a happy workforce to kind of promote the idea that people can progress and be those leaders. And that's why it's important to lead from that front and set an example because you're giving people an idea of what they need to be able, what qualities they need to show to be able to step into that role. I've worked in many different customer service jobs across different sectors. I've worked in hotels, I've worked in private storage, I've even worked at football clubs. So I really have had a breadth of experience when it comes to different types of customer service. Um, and I guess, yeah, in all those jobs, I've had managers, team leaders, GMs, general managers that I've looked up to that have helped me in my various different roles, develop me as a person, as a character, as a worker. And without those people, I probably wouldn't have got very far in any of them. And I guess, yeah, I've always enjoyed working and collaborating. Well, that's a key important part of leadership. Um, so I think it's not necessarily something that people grow up thinking one day I want to manage people, but you realize that in order to get things done, in order to work in big business, especially in corporate environments, that is the nature of it, is managing people and working alongside them and promoting them to work with you uh, to help better the business. So I can't honestly say that I've always felt like I wanted to be a manager, but I've always enjoyed working with people, and so I naturally fell into that category. And as I got older, I realized that, you have to work your way up from somewhere. Um, and to be honest, there's no way of getting forward without trying to learn how to lead. You cannot work your way up in any business, especially from a foundation level to any of those different roles that we've talked about without at least acknowledging your ability to lead. So it is very imperative. It's imperative.
That's right. And if there is any conflict or disagreement comes across to you or within your team, how would you handle it?
Mm, yeah, conflict is inevitable. People are going to have disagreements. You are going to be working alongside people that maybe have different ideologies to yourself, to your teammates. Um, and I believe that an effective workforce is a diverse workforce. So you want people from different walks of life, you want people from different religions, different ideological perspectives, because that's the way you're really going to get a true essence of, especially if you're a business that focuses on the customer, your customer are from various walks of life. So it's better to get the outside perspective. So within that, you are naturally going to have people that for want of a better phrase, are going to come to loggerheads with each other because of whatever. Maybe it's different business ideas that they don't agree on. Maybe it's personal things. They just don't, you have people that don't like each other. And so again, effective leadership is having the ability to manage that. You've got to be able to sit down, non-biased, listen to different parties' opinions as to what's happened, and you need to make a correct judgment on what you think, who is in the right and who is in the wrong. Now, every company's going to have their own policies with regards to stuff. So they'll have like a HR dispute policy that you will go through and investigate whatever dispute is in front of you in order to be able to judge that fairly. Because obviously there's a legal process when it comes to certain disagreements that you have to follow by. But any company should have effective HR conflict like SOPs in place that you should be able to follow. But I would say just from the off, from someone that has no experience with dealing with these things, the main important ingredient you need to have is the ability to listen to people, to emphasize, and to do that with like a non-biased. You have to try and judge every situation fairly, and you have to treat people fairly. So, and sometimes if you're too close to your team members, if you are someone that's very hands-on with the team, and you maybe you're not someone that blurs the line between the professional and the personal balance of that relationship you have with your employees. Maybe you would need someone else to come in to judge with that situation, to help investigate that situation, because they're going to come from a non-biased perspective and not, they're not going to be judgmental in it. So it's difficult. It depends on the context of the situation, but in short, emphasize, listen, be not judgmental. And if you can't do those three things, then you need to get somebody else within your organization to step in and lead with that HR dispute, because otherwise you're not going to come with a fair outcome.
That's really good how you defined it.
Mm,
So when we are human beings, we have
of
loads of
course, yeah.
emotions, yeah. So we
Yeah.
are sometimes we get down with the work or without our personal or professional life. So what strategy do you use to motivate or inspire your team when you get these challenges?
Yeah, that's really good. And again, a really hard thing, right? Because if you're managing like a small team, like let's say a cleaning team or something where the work is monotonous or maybe mundane, it's really important to try and motivate your team below you so that you're trying to get the best out of them. And I think going back to the previous question, I think empathy is a great bit of that. You need to empathize with your workers, realize what they do, their day-to-day jobs to help you out. And also, I think in order to keep them motivated, you really need to try and empower them. So it's a really powerful tool to make someone take ownership over their position. So again, let's go back to the cleaning team analogy. If you were trying to make a decision on scheduling what parts of the building to clean when, what's better for a priority taking, rather than just as a leader going, okay, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do this, and just point it all out to your plan, it'd be better to get everybody together to empower the team to be like, okay, this is the challenge we have. We need to schedule how we're going to clean this building for context and have your cleaners go, actually, it'd be really useful if I started here and then here because I know there's this plug socket, or your team will basically give you ideas that you're not aware of because they do the day-to-day job. So they are better to inform you. And it's better to have a collaboration process to empower your employees, to make them think for themselves in order to get the better team collective. And even if you don't take those opinions, even if you don't put any of those into practice, the simple act of getting people around a table to talk about something that they are a part of and making them have a say on it. And if they do come up with good points, running with them points and going, okay, yeah, that's a brilliant idea. Let's go with that. That is one of the main motivational tools that I would say is empathizing with your employees and then empowering them to be what I like to think is critical thinkers. Um, I know we're going to move on to a book that me and you are very keen over, Shazad, so we'll talk about that later. But a part of that talks about being a dependable, someone that depends on somebody else to do the thinking for them, someone to be, um, and then interdependent, someone to think for themselves, to like move forward with that thinking. And I think understanding critical thinking and getting people to think for themselves and getting people to take ownership and feel like they have an actual say in the role that they're doing is important technique of empowerment, and that will keep people motivated in their positions. And that's what we're all trying to. We're all on this journey together. If you've got a team, we're all trying to work towards the same goal. You just got people coming at it from different levels. So empowering your team to think for themselves is a great motivational tool.
Okay. So do you always use a method or the star method which I use in any
Yeah,
situation? It is called situation, task, action, results. Is this the
yeah.
method you use or you use a different method?
That's really good. So, yeah, the star method is one analogy for a number that are out there. Anybody that does any reading around leadership or life coaching, that kind of thing, would probably come across this method. There are different variants of it, and essentially, what star tries to do is to try and milestone your objectives so that you can quite clearly see what the steps are needed to achieve that. I haven't used Star, but I know from talking with yourself, Shazad, and other people in the business that it is a very, very highly used method. There is another one that I use, which is called SMART. It's very similar. It just tries to break down your goals that you're trying to achieve in small little milestones so you can actually measure how effective that is. So you gave the example of STAR being situation, task, action, result. Um, I think that's pretty simple in the context, the situation. What's the situation that you're trying to achieve? The task, what are you going to do or think about in order to achieve that? The action is then implementing that task, the action plan about it, and then result is kind of looking back, analyzing how successful that was. Um, Smart is a little bit different. It's more towards goals and more towards it's really good if you're trying to motivate a team member to think about their role and looking at what goals they could set in order for them to then progress or maybe become a team leader or a manager. And smart is basically specific. So if I wanted a skill like I want to be better at HR, that's not specific enough. But if you said something like, okay, I want to be better at HR so that I could investigate conflicts within the business, that's more specific. It has to be measurable. So how are you going to measure that? So with the previous example of learning HR cases, you could say, I'm going to do that by taking part in 2 HR investigations within the next 6 months. That is a measurable thing that you can attain. You then, how achievable is that? So you have to then look at, okay, like over the course of 6 months, how many HR cases does the business have? If the average was like 4 a month, then of course your previous objective is achievable because your plan is to do 2 within 6. So it's that kind of thing. And then realistic is the R part. How realistic is that idea? Again, it looks back towards your first goal. You know, if you set a goal of I want to be the company CEO by next month, you know, that's not very realistic. But trying to get involved in some HR investigations, that is realistic. And then timely again just looks at like how long, how many times or how long you're going to do this process. So I aim to get it done within a year, or I might repeat this process twice within a year. And then if you basically underlie those small milestones, you can measure it, you can see how achievable it is, and then once you break it down, you think to yourself, okay, cool. So if I follow that within 6 months, I will have that extra experience. I've set out how I'm going to do it, the time limit in which I'm going to do. You feel confident in your planning because you should always plan ahead, as we all know. I know it's very hard in this day and age, Shazad, but we should. Um, so that's my example of smart that you basically gave there. But there's many other examples, and I'm sure yourself, Shazad, could recommend many books to your listeners that would give
Yeah.
various methods of this. So yeah, but they're very important, and it's always good to try and work with one. I think it's again we're going to talk about it later, but developing habits are key.
Okay, using a star method or a smart method. So, as a leader, when you get in a challenging situation, so how would you make a decision?
Okay. So as a leader, how would I get? Yeah, again, it all depends on the context. If we're talking about like using the SMART method so for instance, I have done in companies, you have to have like catch ups with your staff, with your team members, and we have to try and set objectives for them so they can see how they're doing in their role. Again, it's trying to empower your employees to make them feel good about the role. So SMART is a really good method for sitting your employee down, say once a quarter, a year, sit down, be like, okay, this is your role. How are we going to develop you in this role? Let's set some objectives. Let's use SMART to make them measurable, achievable, timely, and then let's set them in motion. And then in 6 months' time, you come back to the plate, you see how far your employees have gone with that, and if they've completed all the tasks, great. They've now progressed a little bit. Let's set some more objectives. Let's move on forward. So I don't know how much smart would help in dealing with like a conflict situation, but certainly in terms of like personal development for employees as a management tool, it's great because again, you can give your employees to set their own objectives and make their own objectives smart. So they're thinking about it from the start to the finish before they even come to the meeting with you to say, this is what I want to achieve. Um, with conflict management, I guess the STAR method would probably be more resilient because it's a bit wider in scope. I haven't used that method myself. Um, and again, with conflict management, it is so variant. It depends on what the conflict is. Is it just a disagreement between two employees? Is it like a gross misconduct where someone has gone against the company in a big way, really against policy, in which you might be looking at dismissal? Then, it's very difficult to know because it's such a specific thing, HR cases and points of conflict. It really is so case specific, and you have to be so careful with how you deal with these situations. But again, going back to what we were saying, I think as long as you come from the approach of empathy with everybody, you come from the approach of fair judgment, non-biased. I don't think you can really go wrong in dealing with these situations. And you have to empower yourself sometimes. You have to have faith in your own ability to be able to manage these things. But I would say, in my opinion, smart and the star method would definitely be more used in a way of setting objectives for people and giving and empowering them to set their own objectives, as opposed to using it as a conflict management sort of tool.
Okay. So, as you know, I read a lot of books, articles, listen a lot of podcasts for
Yeah.
personal development, and I use those whenever I can use the tool or just a line. Yesterday, I was reading another book, Art of Remembering. So how you can have unlimited memory, like there is few C, create, connect, and continuous. So there's a lot of
Okay.
books. Books are on habits like Atomic Habits, but I know you are currently reading the Seventh Habit of Highly Effective People, which is written by Stephen Covey. So
Yes.
as a leader, how do you think that book will help for your team to perform in a high performance? And as a leader, how did it help you, the book?
Well, what a great question. And I know you're a keen fan of this book, and I am on my own journey with it as well. Like I probably so the Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey is essentially a manual. It's not a book that you're going to read once and then put it on the shelf and that's that. It's more of a guide to develop habits, literally as it says, to develop habits in order to make you better effective at being whatever, effective at leadership, effective at the time management, all of these things. Um, it's really really popular, and it should be because it's fantastically written. Stephen Covey has a way of writing that makes you understand and it actually relates to yourself. The book was originally written by his father, and then it was finished by Stephen Covey. So he comes from a generation of critical thinkers, and they've looked at various case studies from many famous people, walks of life. Bill Gates, just as one example. But essentially, what it is, it's a methodology, piece by piece structure in order to develop what they call seven habits. Um, the first three habits, one, two, and three, are about personal victories. They're little habits and stuff that you change within yourself that you can see. So for myself, I've given myself a challenge now to read 5 pages every day. So whatever book I'm reading, I read 5 pages every day. That's my one of my personal challenges. And every day that I do that, it's a small little victory. Makes me feel good. The other three habits are outward habits. They're victories that other people can see. Um, they're they're more objective based as opposed to personal based, but they're very useful. And the final habit is what they call sharpening the saw. So it's just redoing the whole process, rekindling the whole thing. Um, I would say that even if the book is something that you read once and put it on the shelf and you never use it again, I would argue with anybody it's impossible to read this book and not take something away from it, even if you're not aware. I think that everyone should at least read it at once because I think it does have some key points about how we personally develop, how we have unconscious biases, how we have different ideologies or paradigms as it's discussed. And it's very, very interesting because it can teach you a lot about how you've already developed from a young age to, like, say, your early teen years and how other people's judgments and whatever are judged on you. So, as I say, it's used as a manual. You're meant to read it bit by bit, and you're meant to practice what it preaches every day, and it is proven to make you more of a highly effective person. But as I say, even if you're just someone who wants to read it once and put it on a book, I guarantee that this book will have something in it that you will read and you'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, that is definitely not how I thought about myself in this way or how I can use it. Um, but again, the reason how I think it's really effective within promoting leadership within a team is again, it is sort of giving that opportunity of empowerment. I've said it a lot throughout this conversation, but I really do think it's a key point. To lead is not just to tell people what to do and to be like the boss or the whatever. That is a very 5% part of leadership. As I say, like to give people the tools to be interested in their own self-development is empowering a person. You're empowering someone to better themselves, to upskill, to learn something new. So I think this book could be used effectively in a team environment, even if you just set up like a book club at work. Like as a leader, just say, "Hey guys, really good book. Buy a copy for everybody. Let's read a chapter by like next month, and then let's have a chat about it." Even setting something like that is still gonna have benefits to your team to empower them, to make them understand that you have their best interests at heart. You want them to develop, and you want them to like better themselves and think for themselves. And actually, as an employee, that makes you just feel okay, cool. This company, this person who's in charge of me, my team leader, actually, cares about how I am. And that's what I mean. This empathy is important, right? You've got to care about your employees, but also because it's not just because you want to be a good person and you want that person to have a good life or whatever. You also you need to empower people so they trust you. So that then, when the workday's getting hard and you need somebody to do something outside of their job or you need a favor or whatever, that person's going to go, no problem. Like for you, not an issue. And it's all about promoting that sense of camaraderie. And I think empowering people to read this book, to try and take something of it, is giving them ownership of themselves and empowering them to try and better themselves. And I think that could, by doing that, if everybody tried to do that for their employees, I think we'd end up with a lot more better companies, with a lot more success, with growth, net profits, and all of that will sort because we have to start with the person, the individual that's in front of you, and not see people as a number, see people as people. I think this is really key. And I think the Seven Habits of Highly Effective People um, does that because it speaks to you as a human being, as a person, gives you examples, and like I say, it really is a manual. So if you're someone that maybe sees business as like a religion, then think of the Seven Habits as like a version of your Bible, if you like, because I mean, it sold millions of copies worldwide. It's a really really highly read book. And I know just from conversations with yourself, Shazad, that like it's had a massive impact on your thinking and your development. And I know for myself, it's had the same. So, and me and you are people from completely different walks of life, and yet it's had a profound effect on us. So I think that in itself speaks for how successful this book really is.
Okay, lastly, our wrap-up question. What advice will you give to someone about this book who is reading it in few lines?
Yeah, yeah, no, I that's a really good point. It's a really good point. I would say one of the key things about this book is that it acknowledges how people are different. It acknowledges that people have different walks of life and different methodologies and approaches to that. And so, for anyone reading this book, I would say it's it's going to help you understand people a lot, and it's going to help you understand yourself a bit more. Maybe what motivates you, maybe where you lack motivation, maybe where you lack ambition, where maybe you're not completely focused on something, and you realize, or you're focused on the wrong thing, and you read this book, and then suddenly you think, my focus is in the wrong place. I'm not motivated towards the right things. Um, I would say come and read this book with an open mind. Be prepared to learn something about yourself that you might find challenging, that you may not necessarily agree with because you have biases about yourself. But this book will challenge that and will ask you to think about yourself and other people in a slightly different way. So I think the key thing is to come to this book with an open mind. And not that you're just going to read it and it's going to change. There is work that needs to be done. But if you stick with it, if you use this book as a manual, it will help you develop successful and motivational habits that will benefit yourself. And I'll end it on this that um, one of the leadership courses that I went on recently, who I have a fantastic mentor on it. Yeah, he's a great guy. His name is Patrick, and he's a learning and development coach. And he explains to us that there is no pain, there is no growth, sorry, without pain. And again, like I was saying, this book will challenge your own personal beliefs on how you think you learn or how you think what motivates you. And you have to be prepared to have your opinion changed. So everybody should go out and read it. Remember, there's no growth without pain, and it's impossible for anybody to pick up this book. And like I said before, even if you read it once and then put it back on your shelf, you will read something within it that will stay with you, even if it's subconscious. So no growth without pain. Keep growing, basically.
Thank you very much, Jason. Thank you for your precious time. I am really grateful to you that you came to Create Momentum podcast and share with us the gems. Really thankful and thank you.
Yeah. And thank you too, Shazad, and thank you to all your listeners. And I hope all the best for create momentum and its listeners, and I hope that all of them get excited in the world of leadership, the world of coaching, and get on board. And if I can give them anything from this, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. It's one of the many books that will get you right on the way. And thank you, Shazad, for your time. I appreciate it as well.
Thank you.